There is a kind of lie that doesn't feel like a lie at all. It doesn't come with guilt. It doesn't keep you up at night. It doesn't announce itself in the mirror. It just settles into your life quietly, the way dust settles on old furniture. Slowly, invisibly, until one day you run your finger across the surface and realize how long it has been since anyone actually cleaned anything. That lie has a name. And deep down, if you've lived long enough, you already know what it is. It's the lie that says, seeming good is enough. Not being good. Not living good. Not choosing good when no one is watching and no one would ever know the difference. Just seeming good. Looking the part. Saying the right things at the right times. Wearing the right expression on your face when people need you to look like you have it together. And here is what makes this particular lie so dangerous. It works. For a long time, it works remarkably well. People believe it. They smile at you. They trust you. They hold you up as an example. And somewhere along the way, the performance becomes so natural, so effortless, so much a part of who you are in public, that you begin to lose track of where the performance ends and where you actually begin. That is not a small thing. That is one of the deepest forms of suffering a human being can carry. Because you can fool everyone around you. You can fool your family. You can fool your friends. You can even fool yourself on most days. But there is a part of you, quiet, patient, relentless, that never gets fooled. And that part of you keeps a record. It watches every choice you make. It notices every time you chose appearance over truth. Every time you smiled when you should have spoken. Every time you stayed silent when you should have stood up. Every time you let the image of a good person replace the actual work of becoming one. And over time, that record becomes heavy. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled an empire and still found time to wrestle with his own soul every single morning, wrote something that has stayed with me for a long time. He said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Not, if it doesn't look right. Not, if people won't think it's true." He said right and true as if those things exist independently of anyone's opinion of them. As if virtue is not something you perform for an audience, it is something you practice in the dark, when the audience has gone home and the lights are off and the only person left in the room is you. But we live in a world that rewards the performance. We live in a world that applauds the image. We live in a world where how you are perceived often matters more than who you actually are. And most of us learned this lesson very early, long before we even had words for it. We learned that when you look good, life goes smoother. When you seem kind, people treat you better. When you project confidence, doors open. When you wear the mask of a person who has everything under control, no one asks uncomfortable questions. So we put on the mask. And we told ourselves it was just for today. Just for this situation. Just until things settled down. Just until we had more time, more strength, more courage to be real. And then one day we looked in the mirror and realized, today never came. The mask stayed on. The real work never happened. And somewhere behind all that careful presentation of a good life, a quiet desperation took root. Not loud enough to be called a crisis. Not dramatic enough to be called a breakdown. Just a low, persistent ache. The feeling that something is missing, that something is off. That you are living a version of your life that looks right from the outside but feels hollow from the inside. If any part of what I'm saying is resonating with something in you right now, something you felt but maybe never put into words, I want you to stay with this reflection. Don't run from it. Don't scroll past it. Let it sit with you for a while. Because sometimes the most important conversations we will ever have are the ones we have with ourselves. And if this message is finding you at exactly the right moment, consider subscribing to this channel and leaving a like. Not for me, for the person who needs to hear this next, the one who is one recommendation away from finding the reflection that changes something in them. Your support helps this reach them. Now let me go deeper. Because the mask doesn't begin with dishonesty. That's the part nobody tells you. The mask usually begins with pain. With something you needed to protect. With a version of yourself that got hurt. maybe very early, maybe very deeply, and decided that if you could just look strong enough, composed enough, put together enough, then nothing could touch you again. Seneca wrote that, "It is not that I am brave, it is that I know what is worth fearing." And there is a kind of reversed wisdom in that, because most of us spent years being afraid of exactly the wrong things. We feared judgment. We feared rejection. We feared being seen as weak, or confused, or lost. And in our fear, we built walls. Polished walls. Beautiful walls. Walls that looked like confidence and wisdom and grace from the outside, but were really just elaborate ways of keeping people far enough away that they couldn't see the cracks. And the cracks were always there. They're still there now. Not because you failed. Not because you are broken beyond repair. But because you are human, and being human means living with cracks. The Stoics understood this. They didn't ask people to be perfect. They asked people to be honest. Honest with themselves first. Honest about what they could control and what they could not. Honest about the difference between the life they were living and the life they actually wanted to live. Epictetus, who was born into slavery and yet became one of the greatest teachers of inner freedom who ever lived, said something that I think about more and more as the years pass. He said, "First, say to yourself what you would be. Then do what you have to do. First, say to yourself what you would be. Not what you would seem. Not what you would project. Not what you would post or perform or present. What you would be." When was the last time you sat quietly with that question? When was the last time you looked past all the roles you play, the parent, the professional, the neighbor, the person who always seems fine, and asked yourself, honestly and without flinching, who am I when no one is watching? What do I actually value? What have I been choosing, day after day, that I would be ashamed to name out loud? Those questions are uncomfortable. I know. They are supposed to be. Discomfort is the price of self-knowledge. And self-knowledge, real, deep, unflinching self-knowledge, is the only foundation on which an actual life can be built. Not a performed life. Not an impressive life. An actual life. As you listen to this, you may be noticing that this pain has layers, that the mask is connected to old wounds, to fears you haven't fully named yet, to choices you made a long time ago that you've been carrying without fully examining. I left something in the comments, something simple and quiet, that goes a little deeper into this feeling, for those who want to reflect more calmly later, in their own time and their own space. Because here is the truth that took me a long time to understand: the mask doesn't protect you. It isolates you. When you spend your life making sure no one sees the real you, you succeed. No one sees the real you. And then you wonder why you feel so alone even in a room full of people. You wonder why the relationships in your life feel somehow surface level, somehow slightly off, somehow not quite as nourishing as they should be. You wonder why, after a lifetime of being seen as a good person, you still feel this inexplicable hunger, this longing for something more real, more true, more yours. It's because connection, real connection, the kind that actually feeds the soul, is only possible between real people. Not between versions. Not between performances. Not between two carefully managed images trying to appear relatable to each other. Real connection happens in the gap between the mask and the face. It happens when someone sees you, actually sees you, the uncertain, imperfect, searching, trying hard and sometimes failing you, and stays. It happens when you see yourself that way and stay, too. That is what the Stoics were pointing toward. Not a life of cold discipline and rigid self-control. A life of authenticity. A life lived from the inside out, rather than from the outside in. A life where your choices reflect your actual values, not the values you want to be seen as having. A life where you can lay your head down at night and know, quietly without ceremony, that you were real today. That you showed up as yourself. That you did not betray the person you are trying to become, in order to protect the image of the person you have always appeared to be. That is a life worth living. And it is never too late to begin. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that no amount of sleep can fix. You felt it before. Maybe you feel it right now. It's not the tiredness that comes from working too hard or moving too fast. It's the tiredness that comes from pretending too long. From carrying a version of yourself that was never quite true. From spending decades making sure that the world saw exactly what you wanted it to see, and slowly, quietly, forgetting what was underneath all of that effort. That exhaustion is real. And it deserves to be named. Because we live in a culture that celebrates strength and punishes vulnerability. A culture that rewards those who appear to have it all figured out and quietly sidelines those who admit they are still searching, still struggling, still unsure. And so we learned. Most of us learned very young, that the cost of being honest about your confusion was too high. That it was safer to project certainty. Safer to perform composure. Safer to look like you had arrived somewhere, even when you were still lost somewhere deep inside. And the performance became a habit. And the habit became a life. And the life became a quiet prison, one with very comfortable walls, but a prison nonetheless. Seneca wrote, with that particular kind of bluntness that only someone who has truly suffered can carry. Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power. Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power. Not he who controls others. Not he who commands rooms or earns admiration or sits at the head of tables. He who has himself. He who knows what he is, accepts what he is, and from that honest foundation, chooses how he will live. That kind of power is rare. Because it requires something most of us have spent our whole lives avoiding. It requires honesty. Not the polite kind of honesty. Not the kind you offer when it costs you nothing. The deep, uncomfortable, unflattering kind of honesty. The kind that looks at the choices you have made and asks, without judgment but without flinching either, was that true? Was that real? Was that me? Or was that the mask? And I want to be clear about something here, because I think it matters deeply. This is not about guilt. This is not about shame. This is not about going back through your life with a harsh light and punishing yourself for every moment you chose appearance over truth. The Stoics were not interested in self-flagellation. They were not interested in suffering for its own sake. They were interested in clarity. In seeing things as they are, so that you can respond to them as they are. Not as you wish they were, not as you fear they might be, but as they are right now, in this moment. And the clarity they pointed toward always began with the same question. What is actually within my control? This is perhaps the most important question in all of Stoic philosophy. And it sounds simple, deceptively simple. But when you actually sit with it, when you actually apply it to your own life, to your own fears, to your own patterns of behavior, it opens something profound. You cannot control how people see you. You have tried. For years, maybe for decades you have tried. You have chosen your words carefully. You have managed your image. You have shaped and sculpted and presented a version of yourself designed to earn the approval of the people around you. And it has cost you enormously. It has cost you energy you needed for other things. It has cost you authenticity you could have spent on real relationships. It has cost you a kind of inner peace that only comes when you stop fighting against what is real. You cannot control how people see you, but you can control who you are. You can control your choices. You can control your responses. You can control the slow, daily, unglamorous work of becoming someone whose inner life matches their outer life. Someone who doesn't need to manage an image because they are simply being themselves, honestly, imperfectly, courageously themselves. That is the work. And it is the only work that actually matters. Many people have asked me how to carry this kind of reflection beyond a single moment, how to take what you feel listening to something like this and bring it into your daily life, into your ordinary days, into the moments when no one is watching and the old habits want to come back. That's why I left something in the comments, a small, quiet book that touches exactly this pain, gently and without rush. For those who want to go deeper. For those who feel ready to sit with these questions a little longer than a video allows. But let me ask you something now, and I want you to sit with this question honestly, without rushing to answer it. When was the last time someone truly knew you? Not the version of you that shows up at family gatherings. Not the version that responds to emails and keeps appointments and asks how people are doing without ever really expecting a real answer. Not the version that knows exactly what to say to avoid conflict, to smooth things over, to keep the peace at the cost of the truth. When was the last time the real you, with all your doubts, all your regrets, all your unanswered questions, was actually present in a room with another person? For many people reading this, the honest answer is, a very long time ago. Or maybe, I'm not sure I've ever let that happen. Or maybe something even harder than that, I'm not sure I even know who that person is anymore. And that is perhaps the most heartbreaking cost of a life lived behind a mask. Not that other people don't know you, but that you don't know you. Because when you spend long enough performing a version of yourself, when you spend long enough reacting to what people expect of you rather than listening to what you actually feel and need and believe, you lose the thread. You lose the connection to your own inner voice. That still, quiet, reliable voice that used to tell you when something was wrong. That used to tell you when you were off course. That used to pull at you gently in the direction of what was true for you, even when what was true was inconvenient or uncomfortable or unwelcome. That voice doesn't disappear. It cannot disappear. It is too essential to what you are. But it can get very quiet. It can get buried under years of noise and performance and distraction. And when it gets that quiet, you start making choices from the outside in, from what looks right, from what feels expected, from what keeps the image intact, rather than from the inside out. And life starts to feel like something that is happening to you, rather than something you are living. Epictetus understood this. He said, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." There is profound liberation in those words, but also a profound challenge. Because what he is asking is not passivity. He is not asking you to give up, to stop caring, to stop trying. He is asking you to stop fighting reality. He is asking you to come into honest contact with what is actually true about your life, your choices, your patterns, your inner world, and from that honest contact begin to move differently. Not from fear. Not from performance. Not from the need to be seen a certain way. But from something deeper. Something quieter. Something that has been waiting patiently underneath all the noise. Your actual self. And here is what I have come to believe. After a long time sitting with these questions, after many seasons of wrestling with my own masks, my own performances, my own carefully maintained appearances, the moment you stop trying to seem good, is the moment you finally have a chance to become good. Not perfect. Not admirable. Not impressive. Good. In the truest, quietest, most private sense of that word. Good in the way that needs no audience. Good in the way that costs something. Good in the way that Marcus Aurelius was pointing to every time he sat down in the early morning hours to write in his journal. Not for anyone to read, not to be quoted or admired, but just to remind himself, one more time, who he was trying to be. That kind of goodness is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't post about itself or need validation or require applause. It simply is, present in the choices you make when no one is watching, present in the way you treat people when there is nothing to be gained from it, present in the slow, patient, daily work of aligning your inner life with the values you actually believe in. It is the work of a lifetime. And it begins not with a dramatic transformation, not with some sudden revelation that changes everything at once, but with something far smaller and far more courageous. It begins with honesty, with one honest look in the mirror, one honest admission, to yourself, just to yourself, that the mask has been on too long, that you are tired, that you are ready, finally, truly ready, to begin the quiet work of being real. If this reflection is stirring something in you, something you've been carrying for a long time without fully naming it, I want to invite you to leave a word in the comments. Just one word. The word that comes to mind when you hear this. It might be tired. It might be ready. It might be afraid. It might be something I haven't said yet. Whatever it is, leave it there. Because sometimes the first honest thing we say out loud even in a comment, even to strangers, is the first crack of light through a very long darkness. And if this message is speaking to someone you love, someone who has been hiding behind their own careful performance for too long, share it with them. Quietly. Without explanation. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for another person is simply to say, "I thought of you when I heard this." There is a moment that comes to almost everyone who has lived long enough. It doesn't arrive with fanfare. It doesn't announce itself. It comes quietly, the way dawn comes, not all at once, but gradually, almost imperceptibly, until you look up and realize that the darkness has changed and something new is beginning. It is the moment you stop running. Not from the world. Not from other people. From yourself. And when that moment comes, when you finally stop, when you finally turn around and face the life you have been living, the choices you have been making, the person you have been pretending to be, something unexpected happens. Something the fear never told you would happen. Something the mask was never designed to let you feel. You feel relief. Not the shallow relief of a problem solved or a conflict avoided. Something deeper than that. The relief of a long journey finally reaching the place it was always meant to go. The relief of putting down something you have been carrying so long you forgot it wasn't supposed to be yours. The relief of hearing your own voice, your real voice, the one underneath all the performance, speaking clearly, simply, without apology. I am here. I am real. I am enough. Marcus Aurelius wrote, in the quiet of his own private pages, with no audience and no applause. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. All within yourself. Not in the opinions of others. Not in the image you project. Not in the carefully constructed reputation that took years to build and requires constant maintenance. Within yourself. In the way you think. In the relationship you have with your own interior life. And that relationship, the relationship with yourself, is the one most of us have neglected the longest. We tended to every other relationship. We showed up for other people. We gave our time and our energy and our attention to the world outside us. We kept every appointment except the most important one, the appointment with our own truth, the appointment with our own soul. The appointment that no one else can keep for you and that, if you miss it long enough, begins to feel like a door you are no longer sure you know how to open. But the door is always open. That is what I want you to hear today. Not as a comfortable phrase. Not as a spiritual consolation that sounds nice but means nothing. As something true, as something that the Stoics understood deeply and that life, in its long patient wisdom, eventually confirms. It is never too late to be honest. It is never too late to choose differently. It is never too late to take off the mask. Not violently, not all at once, not in some dramatic gesture of self-reinvention, but gently. The way you take off something you have worn for so long that your skin needs a moment to remember what air feels like. Gently. Slowly. One honest choice at a time. Because this is what the Stoics knew that the world around them often forgot. And what the world around us still often forgets. The quality of your life is not determined by what happens to you. It is determined by how you respond to what happens to you. And your response, the real response, not the performed one, not the one designed to look good in front of others, comes from the inside. It comes from who you actually are when the noise settles. It comes from the values you have genuinely internalized, not just professed. It comes from the slow, unglamorous, deeply human work of knowing yourself. Seneca said, "Retire into yourself as much as you can. Retire into yourself." Not as an act of withdrawal from life. Not as avoidance or isolation. As an act of return. As a coming home to the only place where real clarity is ever found. The only place where real strength is ever built. The only place where real peace, not performed serenity, but actual, earned, hard-won peace, actually lives. Inside you. Underneath the mask. Underneath the years of careful presentation. Underneath the fatigue and the doubt and the long-held question you have never quite let yourself ask out loud. Underneath all of that, You are still there. Waiting. Patient. Unchanged in the ways that matter most. And I want to say something now to the part of you that is afraid. The part that hears all of this and feels something stir, something hopeful and terrified in equal measure. The part that wants to believe that it is not too late. That wants to believe that the real work can still begin. That wants to believe that a life lived more honestly, more courageously, more aligned with what is actually true, is still possible. To that part of you, I want to say this: your fear is not evidence that you are wrong. Your fear is evidence that this matters. That this is real. That something in you recognizes the truth of what we are touching here and understands. Not intellectually but in the bones, in the body, in the place where real knowing lives, that this is the direction. That this is the path. That this is the question your life has been quietly asking you for a very long time. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when there is nothing to prove and no one to impress, and the only thing left is the truth of this moment and what you choose to do with it? That person, that real, uncertain, searching, trying, imperfect, deeply human person, is not someone to be ashamed of. That person is someone to be known. By yourself first. And then, slowly, carefully, with the people in your life who deserve that kind of trust. Epictetus said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." And there is something in that, something worth carrying, about the difference between living from lack and living from presence. Between spending your days mourning the authentic life you haven't yet lived and beginning, right now, in this moment, to live it. Not perfectly. Never perfectly. The Stoics were not asking for perfection. They were asking for effort. Conscious, daily, humble effort. The effort to notice when the mask goes on and ask yourself why. The effort to choose truth over appearance in the small moments, because it is always the small moments that shape a life. The effort to treat your own inner life with the same attention and care you have spent your whole life giving to your outer image. That effort, quiet, invisible, deeply private, is the most important work you will ever do. I have been thinking about what it means to arrive at the end of a life and feel, not triumph, not pride, not the satisfaction of a successful performance, but wholeness. The sense that you were real, that you showed up as yourself, that the life you lived was actually yours, chosen from the inside, built on honest ground, given freely rather than performed carefully. That kind of wholeness is available to you. Not someday. Not after some transformation is complete or some ideal is reached. Now. In the ordinary days. In the quiet choices. In the small, consistent, courageous decisions to be a little more honest, a little more real, a little less concerned with how you appear and a little more attentive to who you actually are. Marcus Aurelius, who carried the weight of an empire and still found time every morning to remind himself of what actually mattered, wrote something I want to leave with you today. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You have power over your mind. Not over what people think of you. Not over whether they approve of you or admire you or see through the mask and stay anyway. Not over the years that have already passed or the choices you cannot take back or the image that took so long to build. Over your mind. Over the way you see yourself. Over the story you tell yourself about who you are and what you are capable of. Over the choice, made fresh every single morning, to live one more day as yourself rather than as a performance of yourself. That power has always been yours. It is still yours now. If this reflection keeps echoing inside you after the video ends, if something here touched a place that doesn't quiet down easily, maybe it is worth continuing on this path a little longer. I left something in the comments for those who feel exactly this and want to reflect more calmly, in their own time, without rush, without pressure. It is there for you whenever you are ready. And if you have made it this far, if you have sat with these words and let them reach the places they were meant to reach, I want you to know something. The fact that you are here, listening, searching, willing to sit with uncomfortable questions about your own life, is itself an act of courage. It is itself a crack in the mask. It is itself the beginning of something real. Don't underestimate it. Don't rush past it. Sit with it. Let it breathe. Because in the end, after all the philosophy and all the reflection and all the long, winding roads of self-examination, the truth is simpler than we usually let it be. You do not need to seem good. You are already, underneath everything, something worth being honest about. The question is not whether you are enough. The question is whether you are willing, finally, quietly, without an audience, to believe that, and then to live accordingly. The real journey doesn't begin when everything is figured out. It begins the moment you stop pretending it already is.